In the shadow of the mushroom cloud, cinema has dared to confront the unthinkable, the instant when humanity pushes the button. These films don't just entertain, they haunt, warn, and leave audiences staring into the abyss. Join us as we explore the 20 most terrifying nuclear war movies ever made, stories that feel chillingly possible. First, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, 1964. Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove is one of cinema's strangest paradoxes, a comedy that may be the most accurate depiction of nuclear annihilation ever made. Released in 1964 at the height of Cold War paranoia, the film takes viewers into a world where a single deranged general can set off a chain of events leading to global destruction. Originally conceived as a serious adaptation of the novel Red Alert, Kubrick quickly realized that the logic of mutually assured destruction was so absurd, it was better served with dark humor. Peter Sellers plays 3 roles, including the wheelchair-bound ex-Nazi scientist Dr. Strangelove, whose involuntary Nazi salutes became instantly iconic. George C. Scott's over-the-top, hawkish general and Sterling Hayden's conspiracy-driven commander are both hilarious and unsettling, caricatures that were barely exaggerated from reality. The war room set, designed by Ken Adam, is perhaps the most famous in film history. A cavernous circle of power, lit like a temple for decision-making. Kubrick's attention to detail made it feel eerily authentic, so much so that the U.S. Air Force privately expressed concern. Yet behind the humor lies horror. The Doomsday Machine, a system that would automatically destroy the world if attacked, mirrors real Cold War strategies. The film ends not with hope, but with the cheery tune of "We'll Meet Again," playing over a montage of mushroom clouds. Kubrick's genius was to make us laugh at the same systems that could end us, and then leave us uneasy, realizing the joke was far too close to reality. 2. Threads, 1984. If Dr. Strangelove makes you laugh nervously, Threads leaves you numb. This BBC television drama is widely considered the most harrowing depiction of nuclear war ever filmed. Set in Sheffield, England, it begins with ordinary people living ordinary lives. Young couples planning weddings, parents doing errands, teenagers hanging out. In the background, tensions between NATO and the Soviet Union escalate. Director Mick Jackson takes his time in the first act, letting the audience settle into the characters' lives so their eventual fates hit like a hammer. When the bombs drop, the shock is immediate. Buildings collapse, firestorms sweep the city, and thousands die in minutes. But it's the second half that cements Threads as a masterpiece of horror. The survivors face a world without infrastructure, medicine, or hope. Radiation sickness ravages bodies, food supplies dwindle, and law collapses into chaos. In a devastating touch, the film shows language itself breaking down over time as education vanishes and humanity slips into a dark age. What makes Threads terrifying is its commitment to realism. Every effect, from burn makeup to fallout patterns, was based on real scientific projections. The BBC even consulted government documents to ensure accuracy. The haunting narration, delivered in a cold, documentary tone, strips away any illusion of heroism. Unlike Hollywood productions that sometimes offer a flicker of survival optimism, Threads offers none. The final image, a young woman giving birth to a stillborn child in a ruined hospital, is as emotionally shattering as anything ever broadcast. Decades later, survivors of the original broadcast still recall being unable to sleep, convinced they had glimpsed the future. 3. The Day After, 1983. When The Day After aired on ABC, 100 million Americans tuned in, making it the most-watched television film in U.S. history. The production was a cultural event. Schools hosted discussions, churches held prayer services, and the White House reportedly took notice. President Ronald Reagan later admitted the film influenced his nuclear disarmament thinking. Set in and around Lawrence, Kansas, the story follows everyday characters: farmers, students, shopkeepers, and doctors. The early scenes are deliberately mundane, interrupted only by radio bulletins and television reports of growing U.S.-Soviet tensions. Then, without warning, the missile's launch. The depiction of nuclear detonation was groundbreaking for network TV. Blinding flashes, shock waves leveling houses, and radioactive ash drifting down like snow. The film didn't shy away from showing the human toll: burns, sickness, panic, and grief. In an era before CGI, the special effects were achieved through practical means and clever editing, which gave them an unsettling authenticity. The second half of the movie focuses on the aftermath: food shortages, mass evacuations, the collapse of law and order. Jason Robards delivers a particularly haunting performance as a doctor, trying to help patients while slowly succumbing to radiation sickness himself. What sets The Day After apart is its balance between spectacle and human drama. It's not just about cities turning to rubble. It's about neighbors, families, and entire communities trying to cling to humanity when the world ends. For many who saw it, the film wasn't entertainment. It was a warning shot, a glimpse of what could happen if diplomacy failed. Fourth Fail Safe, 1964. Released the same year as Dr. Strangelove, Sidney Lumet's Fail Safe is its grim, humorless counterpart. And it's every bit as nerve-wracking. Adapted from Eugene Burdick and Harvey Wheeler's novel, the film plays like a procedural nightmare. A computer malfunction mistakenly sends American bombers to destroy Moscow, and the clock begins ticking toward Armageddon. The movie's power comes from its stripped-down approach. Lumet shot in high-contrast black and white, using tight close-ups and claustrophobic framing to capture the pressure mounting on military and political leaders. Henry Fonda's portrayal of the U.S. president is restrained yet devastating. A man forced to weigh millions of lives against the survival of humanity. The tension is suffocating, conversations are curt, rooms feel airless, and the hum of machines underscores every scene. There's no soaring score to soften the blow, only silence and the low rumble of impending disaster. The film builds to one of the most shocking endings in Cold War cinema. To convince the Soviets the attack was accidental and prevent total war, the president orders the destruction of New York City, sacrificing millions of Americans, including his own wife. The final minutes are wordless, showing the city's death in stark, still frames. While Dr. Strangelove left audiences laughing in discomfort, Fail Safe left them shaken in silence. It's a cold reminder that in a nuclear standoff, human error, not malice, could end civilization. 5. On the Beach, 1959. Based on Nevil Shute's haunting novel, On the Beach isn't about the moment of nuclear war. It's about waiting for its slow, inevitable aftermath. Directed by Stanley Kramer and starring Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire, and Anthony Perkins, the film is set in Australia, one of the last habitable places on Earth after a global nuclear exchange. The survivors live under a quiet, crushing reality. The radioactive fallout is drifting south, and death will reach them within months. The film unfolds at a deliberate pace, showing how people choose to spend their remaining time: racing cars, holding on to doomed romances, or clinging to normal routines. Kramer avoids graphic destruction. Instead, he relies on atmosphere, music, and character performances to convey the weight of extinction. Ava Gardner's portrayal of a lonely woman finding fleeting love with Gregory Peck's stoic naval commander adds emotional depth. Fred Astaire, in one of his rare dramatic roles, plays a scientist wrestling with both the futility of survival and the need to face the end with dignity. The most haunting image comes at the very end. A banner in an abandoned city flaps in the wind, reading, "There is still time, brother." It's a plea to the audience rather than the characters, underscoring the film's intent as a warning. On the Beach was controversial upon release, with some critics accusing it of being too depressing for audiences. But over time, it has become one of the most poignant anti-nuclear statements in film history. A reminder that annihilation might come not with firestorms, but with silence. Last 6. The War Game, 1966. Peter Watkins's The War Game is a pseudo-documentary so realistic that the BBC refused to air it for nearly 2 decades. Shot in a cinema verite style, the film depicts a nuclear strike on Britain and its aftermath. blending fictional interviews with harrowing imagery. The plot is simple but devastating. Escalating tensions lead to an exchange of nuclear weapons, and Kent becomes a target. The camera roams through chaos, firefighters collapsing from heat exhaustion, civilians blinded by the flash, looters executed in the streets. Watkins researched government plans for nuclear emergencies and used real scientific projections for casualties, fallout, and societal collapse. The result is so convincing that many viewers mistook it for an actual documentary. The narration, delivered in a detached, report-like tone, makes the horrors even harder to bear. There's no heroic subplot, no reprieve, only the grim mechanics of survival failing in real time. Though it won the 1967 Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature, the war game remained banned from British television until 1985, partly out of fear it would incite mass panic. Today it stands as a chilling time capsule of Cold War anxiety and a stark reminder of how unprepared society truly is for the unimaginable. Seventh Testament, 1983. 8. By Dawn's Early Light, 1990. One of the last great Cold War nuclear thrillers, By Dawn's Early Light premiered on HBO in 1990, just as the Soviet Union neared collapse. Based on the novel Trinity's Child by William Prochnow, it follows a terrifying scenario. A rogue faction launches a nuclear missile, triggering an automatic retaliatory response between the US and USSR. The film stands out for its focus on decision-making under unimaginable pressure. James Earl Jones plays a seasoned Air Force commander trying to prevent all-out war, while Powers Booth and Rebecca De Mornay star as bomber pilots caught between following orders and preventing catastrophe. The tension escalates as communication lines fail and nuclear launches become irreversible. The film delves into the mechanics of command, from airborne control centers to the Oval Office, where the president must decide whether to launch a final, civilization-ending strike. Unlike more sensationalist portrayals, By Dawn's Early Light treats its subject with sobering realism. It shows how one small trigger, an unauthorized launch, could push superpowers into a no-win scenario. The aerial sequences, shot with real B-52 bombers and KC-135 refueling planes, add authenticity to the drama. Though overshadowed by earlier works like Fail Safe, the film remains a gripping portrayal of how nuclear war might begin, not from malice, but from misunderstanding, miscalculation, and pride. 9. When the Wind Blows, 1986. Based on Raymond Briggs' illustrated novel, When the Wind Blows is an animated film. But don't be fooled into thinking it's for children. Directed by Jimmy Murakami, this British production uses gentle, hand-drawn animation to deliver one of the most devastating anti-nuclear statements ever put on screen. The story follows Jim and Hilda Bloggs, an elderly couple living in the English countryside. Naive and trusting, they believe that following the government-issued Protect and Survive pamphlet will keep them safe if nuclear war breaks out. When the unthinkable happens, they dutifully construct a makeshift fallout shelter in their living room, convinced they will be fine in a few days. The tragedy of the film is that they don't understand the scale of the disaster. They talk about rationing tea and keeping their spirits up, even as radiation sickness slowly takes hold. Their hair falls out, their skin pales, and they grow weaker with each scene. Murakami's choice to pair soft visuals with harrowing subject matter creates a jarring emotional effect. David Bowie's haunting theme song, along with Roger Waters' mournful score, underscores the inevitability of their fate. By the final moments when the couple huddles together in darkness, reciting prayers as their strength fades, the film delivers a gut punch far heavier than explosions or battlefield chaos. When the Wind Blows is a quiet horror, reminding us that nuclear war would not only destroy cities, but also the innocence of those who trust too much in false reassurances. 10th Special Bulletin, 1983. When Special Bulletin aired on NBC, many viewers believed they were watching a real nuclear crisis unfold. Presented as a series of live news broadcasts, the film depicts a group of anti-nuclear activists who seize a harbor tugboat in Charleston, South Carolina. threatening to detonate a homemade nuclear device unless the U.S. disarms some of its warheads. The filmmakers leaned heavily into realism, shooting with handheld cameras, interrupting regular programming with breaking news alerts, and using professional newscasters instead of actors for anchor roles. This verisimilitude was so convincing that NBC was flooded with calls from panicked viewers, even though multiple disclaimers aired throughout. The drama escalates as negotiations unfold on live television. Tensions mount between the captors, the FBI, and the military, all while reporters scramble for facts. The film's climax is shocking. The device detonates, obliterating the harbor, with the news feed cutting out mid-sentence. Behind the scenes, Special Bulletin was crafted by the team that would later create The West Wing, bringing an intelligent focus on political decision-making and media responsibility. It also sparked real-world debate over how the press might handle such a crisis, and whether live coverage could escalate tensions in a hostage situation. By blending political thriller, moral debate, and docudrama realism, Special Bulletin forces viewers to confront how easily misinformation, panic, and pride could turn a nuclear threat into a national tragedy. 11 WarGames, 1983. WarGames took the nuclear threat and filtered it through teenage curiosity, hacking culture, and Cold War paranoia, and in doing so became one of the most influential films of the 1980s. Directed by John Badham, it follows high school student David Lightman, who unknowingly hacks into a NORAD supercomputer while searching for unreleased video games. Thinking he's playing a harmless simulation called Global Thermonuclear War, David triggers a countdown toward real missile launches. The system, unable to distinguish between simulation and reality, begins escalating toward a nuclear strike. The genius of WarGames lies in how it blends youthful naivety with the terrifying automation of military technology. The film popularized the idea that computers could one day bypass human judgment, a fear that resonated strongly in an era of rapid technological change. Production designers worked closely with the U.S. military to recreate NORAD's underground command center, though they had to invent much of the technology as the real facility's layout was classified. The massive war room set, with its glowing wall screens and blinking consoles, became one of the most iconic in 80s cinema. The film's climax, in which the computer runs endless nuclear war simulations, finally concluding, "The only winning move is not to play," delivers a moral as relevant today as it was during the Cold War. Beyond entertainment, WarGames even influenced U.S. policy. It reportedly inspired discussions that led to the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. It remains a rare mix of teen adventure, political thriller, and technological cautionary tale. 12. The Bedford Incident, 1965. In the Bedford Incident, the threat of nuclear war comes not from a sudden missile launch, but from the slow grind of Cold War brinkmanship. James B. Harris directs this tense naval drama about an American destroyer shadowing a Soviet submarine in the icy waters near Greenland. Richard Widmark stars as Captain Eric Finlander, a hard-driving commander determined to prove American superiority at sea. Sidney Poitier plays a journalist aboard the ship, there to profile Finlander, but soon drawn into the psychological strain of the mission. The film's tension builds from small decisions. Aggressive maneuvers, missed signals, orders barked with just a hint too much pride. As the crew grows exhausted, the atmosphere becomes claustrophobic, and mistakes become more likely. The climax comes when a misunderstood order triggers a deadly chain reaction. In the film's unforgettable final moments, the crew realizes too late that their actions have set off a nuclear launch, and there is no way to call it back. The screen fades to black as the world ends. What makes the Bedford Incident so chilling is its plausibility. There's no mad villain, no rogue scientist, just ordinary men pushed by fear, duty, and ego into making an irreversible mistake. It's a reminder that in the Cold War, the line between safety and annihilation was razor thin. 13. Hiroshima Mon Amour, 1959. Alain Resnais. Hiroshima Mon Amour isn't a disaster film in the traditional sense. It's a poetic meditation on memory, trauma, and the shadow of nuclear war. A French actress filming an anti-war movie in Hiroshima begins a love affair with a Japanese architect. As they talk, fragments of their pasts and the city's history intertwine. The film opens with haunting imagery, bodies intertwined, dusted in ash, echoing the aftermath of the atomic bombing. Through their conversations, the lovers grapple with the impossibility of truly understanding each other's pain, hers from a lost wartime romance in France, his from surviving the destruction of Hiroshima. Resnais blends documentary footage with lyrical, non-linear storytelling, creating a dreamlike exploration of personal and collective memory. While there is no on-screen depiction of nuclear attack, the bombing's presence hangs over every frame, a silent character that shapes the lives of all involved. Upon its release, Hiroshima Mon Amour was groundbreaking for its frank discussion of war, trauma, and the human tendency to forget the unbearable. It became a cornerstone of the French New Wave, influencing filmmakers around the world. Its terror is subtle but enduring, not the spectacle of annihilation, but the knowledge that even the worst horrors can fade from memory, and that forgetting is its own kind of tragedy. 14. Panic in Year Zero. Directed by and starring Ray Milland, Panic in Year Zero is a low-budget gem that trades nuclear spectacle for human psychology. The story follows a suburban family setting out on a camping trip when news breaks of a massive nuclear attack on Los Angeles. Far from the city, they avoid the initial destruction, but survival soon becomes a moral battleground. As society collapses, Milland's character transforms from an average father into a ruthless protector, willing to steal, threaten, and even kill to keep his family alive. The film's stark message is that nuclear war doesn't just destroy cities, it strips away the social contracts that keep civilization intact. Shot quickly and cheaply, the film compensates for limited special effects with tense writing and a sharp focus on human behavior under pressure. The absence of direct battle scenes makes the threat feel even more omnipresent. The mushroom clouds are never shown, but their shadow looms over every decision. In the end, the family drives back toward a still smoldering Los Angeles, unsure if there's anything left to return to. It's a reminder that in nuclear war, survival is only the first step in a much longer nightmare. 15. The Divide, 2011. Xavier Gens. The Divide is a claustrophobic, brutal look at what happens after the bombs fall, and what humanity becomes when trapped together underground. Following a sudden nuclear attack on New York City, 9 survivors take shelter in a basement. At first, they work together to ration supplies and wait for rescue. But as days turn into weeks, paranoia, violence, and madness begin to take over. The film doesn't hold back. Food shortages lead to fights, alliances fracture, and the once orderly shelter devolves into a nightmare of abuse and desperation. The threat of radiation outside is matched by the growing danger inside, as human cruelty becomes as lethal as any fallout. While critics were divided, some calling it unflinchingly honest, others finding it too bleak, The Divide stands out for refusing to offer hope. Its grim tone, combined with oppressive production design and unsettling performances, creates a sense of suffocating inevitability. This is not a story about rebuilding, but about breaking down, the slow, ugly collapse of morality when the world outside has already ended. 16. The Sacrifice, 1986. Andrei Tarkovsky's final film, The Sacrifice, approaches nuclear apocalypse from a deeply spiritual and philosophical angle. Shot in Sweden, it tells the story of Alexander, an aging actor who learns that a nuclear war has begun. In a desperate bargain with God, he promises to give up everything, his home, his family, even his voice, if only the catastrophe can be undone. The film unfolds with Tarkovsky's signature long takes and haunting imagery. One of its most famous shots, a house burning in real time, required a full rebuild after a camera malfunction, a testament to Tarkovsky's obsession with perfection. Her than explosions or political drama, the tension here is existential. Is the nuclear war real? Is Alexander's sacrifice madness or salvation? The ambiguity leaves audiences questioning not only the film's ending, but their own capacity for selflessness in the face of annihilation. The sacrifice is less about destruction than about redemption, and whether humanity can earn it before it's too late. 17th Countdown to Looking Glass, 1984. A Canadian television film, Countdown to Looking Glass, blends fictional storytelling with actual news footage to depict the final hours before a nuclear exchange. Presented as a series of live news broadcasts, it follows political and economic crises spiraling into armed conflict between the US and Soviet Union. The film's realism is chilling. It uses real journalists as anchors, intercutting their reports with dramatized scenes from military command centers and political offices. The escalating tension feels authentic precisely because it mirrors how such an event might be covered in real time. By the time missiles are launched, there's no dramatic score, just the flat delivery of reporters announcing the end. The abrupt cutoff, with the broadcast simply ending mid-sentence, leaves the audience in stunned silence. 18. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. Based on Harlan Ellison's novella, A Boy and His Dog is a twisted, darkly comedic take on post-nuclear survival. Set in a desolate wasteland after World War IV, it follows Vic, a young Don Johnson, and his telepathic dog, Blood, as they scavenge for food, shelter, and, most importantly, survival. The film blends pulp adventure with biting satire, showing a world where morality has withered away and only cunning ensures survival. The underground society Vic eventually discovers is no utopia. It's a bizarre, authoritarian community that hides its own sinister secrets. Ellison's sharp dialogue and the film's unapologetic tone make it both disturbing and oddly humorous. It's not about the moment of a nuclear war, but about what kind of strange, fractured society might crawl out of the rubble decades later. 19. Damnation Alley, 1977. Loosely adapted from Roger Zelazny's novel, Damnation Alley is a colorful, pulpy vision of the post-nuclear world. After a massive war devastates the planet, a group of survivors travels across a mutated wasteland in an armored Landmaster vehicle to find safe haven. The film is best remembered for its bizarre mix of tones, giant mutant cockroaches, deadly storms, and oddly cheerful adventure beats. While it didn't impress critics on release, it gained a cult following for its practical effects, ambitious production design, and strange charm. Beneath the campy exterior, Damnation Alley still taps into the fear of a planet permanently altered by nuclear fallout, and the human determination to keep moving forward, even when the road ahead is nothing but ruin. 20th. Threads from Hiroshima, 2011. A more recent entry, Threads from Hiroshima is a hybrid documentary drama that blends survivor testimonies with staged reenactments to capture the human cost of the atomic bombing. While not about global nuclear war, its detailed personal stories show exactly what such destruction means on an individual level. By focusing on the real people who lived through Hiroshima, their memories, losses, and resilience, the film strips away abstraction. It's not about geopolitics. It's about the moment your world disappears in a blinding flash. From surreal satire to unflinching realism, these films don't just imagine nuclear war. They make you feel it. Each one is a warning, a reflection, and a reminder of what's at stake. Which of these haunts you most? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more.